Why
That
not?
sounds good.
There's a woman at Stanford who does this stuff, who's an attorney, who does like legal design or, what's her name? I'll think of her name in a second, just a second.
You
I
know,
just ran across her again recently. Hagen, Margaret Hagen. Does that sound familiar?
I was thinking of Dr. Ron Goldman.
mhm.
Yeah, the YouTube
Mhm.
streaming already.
I don't know. Steve, let's see, what do we,
Here we go. I'll look for her.
Do you want to be co-host? I think you need to be. No, I'm talking about our event.
Oh, yes.
Are you?
That-
Make co. No, you are co-host.
Am I? I don't know. She's the executive director of the legal design lab at Stanford Law School. And she's been worrying about or thinking about how to use, sketching in a legal matter and how to use graphics and all kinds of interesting things.
Nancy is not co-host. She may
That's
need to
funny
be
because it
co-host
says
if she's
stop
going to
having her
present.
be co-host.
My
It
friend
says
actually
remove co-host permissions. So she
edited
has
the
co-host.
text.
Can you, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. I want you to share just to prove that you can.
Me to share? Okay.
I'm going to stop. I want you to try it.
Okay, sharing not turned on. Send a
Mm.
request. So turn on sharing. Oh, look at
People are
Leilani.
showing up. Hi, everybody. We're really happy
Mary.
to have you here.
I see people I know. Which?
Did you make that avatar yourself?
Somebody made it. No, yeah, a graphic designer. But the wonderful thing was there were 12 of us in the work group and he made it like a wreath at Christmas time and everybody was just different from each other. And it was a nicely ethnically diverse group. So
And you couldn't
colorful.
buy any other color of the glasses ever again.
No, but that's right. I can't. I went to the doctor.
should be able to
Wait a minute. Share. Okay. Here's my sharing. Just a second. I got to find what I'm sharing. There, this one. Share. Can you see that?
I see Nancy's screen. I see the PowerPoint frame.
Oh, look at that.
Can you go full
It's
screen?
Yes, we're getting
UX.
extra virgin olive oil with UX.
Wait a second. I got to find it. There it is. Okay. Now I should make it onto
You
slides.
should, go in view.
Slideshow. Like that.
Look at
That
that.
looks
Hey,
good,
pretty
Nancy.
cool, huh?
And there you are being highlighted.
Oops,
And
sorry.
your microphone, can you make it to your microphone inside your lapel? Here.
I know, but I want it to be on the left side. Otherwise, it won't be inside. Well, let's see how that goes. Because then I can point and turn this way and that'll be.
And it's kind of resting on the fabric. I wonder if that, Steve, how does she sound? You should say hello.
I can, Steve, how am I doing?
Nancy sounds great and her slides are working. You should switch back to
And
Ted's
I'm gonna
slides
put
to
me,
start the
I'm
meeting.
gonna turn a microphone on me too. And you can hear me okay?
Yep.
Life is good. All right, we've got 1 or 2 minutes, everybody. We will, there's Mary, oh, I'm sorry, Mary Parks, let her in.
Mhm.
And so Edwin, can you kind of be a little bit aware also of people that want to get in? Just so, or somebody over there? Okay. So we've got ourselves about 9 people. This is good. Now we've got 10. This is good. Why do we have 2 Marys? Mary, why are you 2 people?
Maybe she's, oh, there she is twice.
It's all right. We need more people. So
I don't know why. It's strange. I don't know.
it's okay.
One of them is
We're-
muted. It's
Oh,
okay.
it's all right. It's okay. We're happy to see you in any case. So, all right, I'm about to, can you stop sharing for a moment, please? And do you have, Nancy,
Yes?
do you have a way of plugging this into yours?
No.
Okay.
I don't believe I have that adapter here. Mm-mm.
Just wondering about it.
It's a-
In the car.
The, that's a
So what
HDMI.
Put that in.
Mhm.
Do we have any?
Although you think somebody here does.
What do you have? A USB
I-
probably. A
I have a
USB probably. right?
USB-C.
We need that to HDMI. Do you have a USB-C to HDMI adapter handy?
Or you could have a USB-A to USB-C adapter. Because I have
You might
the,
have something that is
wait, he's
Just a
got
moment,
a
just a moment.
wall of cords over there.
It might be that we have the
USB-C.
technology.
And then
Let's
what am I
try
supposed to
this.
do?
You're supposed to just sit there and smile and look pretty.
I'm not too
Ted,
good.
I don't see your slides right now.
I know. That's because I,
Mhm.
It's beautiful. Is that your computer?
oh, I wish it were.
I think,
We
Edwin
actually,
found
we
it.
might have the technology. Is
let's
that,
see, is this okay?
is that you?
No,
It is.
Does this solve the C to A problem?
Okay,
I
want,
think I just did the C
ah,
to
look,
A.
okay, that's me.
No, not the C to A. I did the HDMI to C.
Okay.
That works. Am I,
Okay.
am I good? Yes, you're looking at my machine.
All right. So in that case, I want I want I just want the HDMI part back. You keep all that fancy business,
Okay,
okay? And I'm going to start the talk,
okay.
okay? And I'm going to say, as soon as I've got everybody's attention, oh, there we are. Welcome everybody to Bay Kai. This is our monthly program meeting where we bring together the best speakers in the HCI world to talk, and we invite everybody to come to our talks, which are often held in San Francisco at Other Lab, and they've been happening here since we had the lock up, the non-lockdown, but we also have the talk sometime at San Francisco, at Stanford, at Santa Clara University. We've had them various places. And and what I guess I'm going to tell you is that we are starting tonight with a longtime friend, and actually Nancy Frishberg has been part of Bay Kai probably longer than almost anybody that we have here
That's still alive.
that is still alive.
It's still alive. Who remembers that famous
And
day
I just
here?
want you to be aware that Bay Kai is part of the Association for Computing Machinery. We're very lucky to be a special interest group of them, 75,000 members. And many times this chapter has been the biggest chapter of SIG-Chi. But the main thing is that ACM Chi is the biggest, what do you call it, sub-organization of ACM. SIG, that's right.
Second
and-
to graph.
No,
Are you sure?
yep.
Really?
We're bigger, yep. Now
Okay.
we're bigger, yep.
All right.
That is weird. But in any case, we have a heckler and we can deal with that. It's part of the nature. I get it. And we hope that you guys enjoy these talks. And if you were here, you'd be getting free dinner. Now, the annual membership costs for being part of Bay Kai is $20. It pays for the Zoom, it pays for the internet, it pays for, well, we are now putting all of the videos, and we are up to, we're putting 3 to 4 new videos up on YouTube every month. And we are going back, now we've gone through all of the videotapes and we're going into the CDs and DVDs. And so it's really happening.
Good.
And it's something that Nancy wanted to happen forever. And it could be done in many ways, but we're doing it. And we have an Eben Selker that's doing all the work with me. So enough of that. I want to just say that we really want your volunteership. We want you all to be part of this. And there's so many things you could do. Helping, what I'm doing right now is I'm the chair, but I'm also reaching out and getting all the good speakers. And I want more people. If anybody has speaker ideas, send them to me. There's criteria. We want them to be, super duper world-class speakers because we deserve that. And we've been able to get the best speakers in the world over and over again. In the last year, we've had Don Norman, Terry Winograd, Peter Hart, Peter Norvig.
Paul Sappho.
Paul Sappho. Michael Neymark. I mean, it goes, yes, that's right. Yeah. How did you know all this? Nancy knows many things.
I track even if I
know,
don't show
I
up.
know. Well, thank you. And we have a treasurer and Melissa Greyer, who's been fabulous and helpful, and Edwin Lee, vice chair, who's been very, very helpful. He set up a lot of the AV most days. And we get together on Tuesdays, the first Tuesday of the month, only for an hour. Please come. It's a fun time because we talk about what we've all been doing, but then we talk about how we can make this a better organization. And the main thing is, if you were really excited and ambitious, and it might be that you could be one of the officers starting next month, because we have our annual elections in June. So yeah, that's great. I know. So enough of this is really boring. Let's get on to the real thing. The real thing is that Nancy Frishberg she's been, I don't know. I mean, is it 50 years that you've been being a linguist? I mean,
Yes.
She has a
I have a,
PhD.
yes,
Yeah.
next year is 50 years since my PhD was issued.
Yes, and it's still relevant.
Yeah, oh,
And
absolutely. Still getting cited.
Yeah, still getting cited. And Nancy does so much. She's very, very energetic. She has run this organization. She's been part of making the programs often for years and years and years. She's been part of outreach and getting people to do things. She's been an amazing part of this organization and held it together many years when things were not so easy. We've done it together even sometimes. But the main thing is that she really gets around to doing other things as well. So she ran a school on linguistics. How can linguists be useful in engineering and more in
We'll talk
HDI?
about that.
You'll
We have
talk
at
about,
least
I bet
one-
she'll talk about that.
Yeah, we have at least one
I'm sure we'll have a
physically
conversation
present
about it.
here who was part of one of those summer schools.
Well, that's fabulous. And these summer schools have been, well, I've heard they were fabulous. Now, I wasn't there. I don't know. And I could say many things. I do know that there's olives on her property because I went to her property to make sure to do some assessment of that. But we will probably get to try out some of her olive oil this evening. And really, I don't want to belabor it. You can read the bio and the abstract on our site, and you'll be able to get the video, I hope, within a few weeks, if she'll allow us to get her to sign the release form.
Sure.
And without further ado, please, you can introduce yourself as well.
I will. Now I get that HDMI thing. And try not to knock over any of the rest of the contents of this table. Am I right side up? Am I upside down? Ah,
You don't look like you're standing on your head.
okay. I think I'm here. Let's see what happens. Things are catching up. Okay. So now, Ted, you can stop sharing and I'll try to start sharing. And let's see if that works. That's not what I wanted. What I wanted was this. Share. And I was there once already. Sorry, just a second.
Can you hand me some water, please?
Where did it go?
And would you like people to hold their questions or ask them as they go?
No, we can go. We can have questions
Send that
in
down there,
between.
please. Put it away.
Just a second. Don't go away, everybody. I'm going to find my window again. Is that it?
You're going to look on
No.
those an array of screens or
Yeah, I'm looking
documents?
for where I pulled out this one window for the
Maybe you could scroll down.
scrolled what?
Scroll the middle thing out.
Well, I'm looking here. No, I don't think I had that window showing. I can't
Well, then
remember which
open it again.
page it's on. So that's why I'm going over here. Hold on. 1 second.
Can you hand
Your
me the
call is
crackers?
very important to us. It's the only thing on the page. I mean, it's one. It's not millions of tabs. That's not it. There, what's that? That's not it. Well, I do have a lot of things open, that's for sure.
You remember what browser?
It's in Chrome. Here, what's this? Is this another version of it? I can't see what's behind.
Can you
here. Just a
scroll
second.
screens?
Here, this is the one. This will work. Just a second. I don't know where the other one went, but we're going to do this. Okay, here we go. Except that,
Can you close the other
So
one?
that would mean sharing.
yes, here we go.
You're not sharing it.
I'm about to share it because I want it to be on its own thing so we don't have to look at the rest of those. Okay, so now I'll stop this. Hold on 1 second and we'll do it again. Now we can do it. Participants can see my screen. Oh my God. Okay.
Push
This
the
is-
share button, the blue share
Yep,
button.
yep, yep. I'm just making sure I'm pointing at the right thing. Now let's do slideshow. Ta-da! Yay! Now let me get all the names out of the way. Okay. Well, hi everybody. I'm Nancy Frishberg and I have been a member of BayChi since 1991. That's a long time. And I'm going to talk about extra virgin olive oil and user experience. I bet you never got to think about those two things in the same breath. The other name for this talk is How I Spent Last Summer. Okay. Let's see if we can go ahead. Come on. I can't even see my cursor. There we go. Okay. Is this thing hanging out in the way? Yes, for me it is. Where can I put that I don't see it?
We don't see it. We
You don't see it?
Uh-uh.
Okay, here. Okay. So this is what we're going to talk about today. Who's Nancy Frishberg? We're going to have a quiz about olives and olive oil. We're going to talk about the document design course, and that goes into how did we approach improving the document. In the document design course, we had a specific document in mind, but all the things we did with that document were generalizable. Oh, I know what I forgot to put in my little pouch. Okay. And the question then is, how did our client like the results that we got? What's the adoption of the improvements? Did we get any adoption? And then for those in the room, we can taste olive oil. And for those not in the room, you can hang out while we're doing that and laugh with us. Or we can just go ahead and do it without you, but we're going to keep going for a while. So I consider myself to have had 3 careers at least. So I started out as a linguist, an educator, and a sign language interpreter. I got my degree at Berkeley and my PhD at UCSD, and I was a faculty member in several places. And then I was I have been an independent researcher that is not affiliated with a specific academic organization since 1980. That's a long time. And the pace of publishing when you're independent is different from the pace of publishing when you're connected with an academic institution, because that's the coin of the realm there, right? But I've managed to publish roughly once a year, sometimes something big, sometimes something small. So I feel like I still have a hand in that game, right? And my language of specialty, as some of you know, is American Sign Language. And as Kathy Pearl commented on one of my announcements that I was going to talk tonight, she says, "Oh, I'm so excited to come to Palo Alto and hear you talk about sign languages." And I said, "Oh, Kathy, it's not Palo Alto, it's San Francisco. Oh, Kathy, it's not sign languages." What's my problem?
Just if you bang on the table.
Oh, if I bang on the table, it bangs on the thing. Okay. I said, too bad, I'm not talking about sign languages tonight, but I am talking about language, and I am talking about UX, and I am talking about olive oil. So as we see, proceeding through the left to right, customary reading, my next career started in about 1985, and it wasn't immediately UX, but I did join the User Interface Institute at IBM, headed by John Richards, whom you remember. And
I still know.
yeah, I saw him post something today. The idea was there were going to be 40 of us in that group, but in fact, it was probably we only ever got up to 35 or 25. This was only. But it wasn't a single group. It was like 4 or 5 different groups, but we were all using the same code base, working in Smalltalk. And the idea was, well, if you build this widget and we build this widget, we can combine our code and everybody will have access to
And
both
David
of those
Smith.
widgets. David Smith, no, that was
Tall, very big.
not David
Small
Smith.
Talk.
Was he
He made
part
the
of
small talk
He
happen.
made small talk, but he didn't make it at IBM, did he?
He did.
Oh,
And
with
he worked on
Adele
the, and he
Goldberg.
worked with, and no, and he worked with the User Interface Institute.
Oh, well, I didn't meet Dave. I don't remember David Smith, but I remember he was, what's his name?
Wendy
Boys.
Kellogg.
The boys group, the people who did the Olympics.
Yeah.
That was where it
David
started.
Boyd.
David Boyce, yes. Okay. Anyway, I was in tech, so IBM, Sun Microsystems, Apple, and I was at Financial Engines, which is fintech before we knew how to pronounce fintech. And I was also at the Center for Civic Design, which is civic tech. And I was also, all during this time, a presenter and producer. I was part of several CHI conferences as a presenter, but also on the program committee, and often in some kind of experimental new venue. I've presented at UXPA, at Dux. I was an organizer for Dux. Obviously, I've been a long
What's
time
Dux?
designing user experiences.
Thank you.
There were 3
I just wanted to
collaborative
say-
conferences with SIGGRAPH, local SIGGRAPH, SIGCHI, and some other organization. I can't remember the third one.
Dux is a very important conference.
Yeah. And the one that was held here in San Francisco was the one I was part of. Richard Anderson, who we also know was one of the program chairs for that. Anyway, I presented a bunch of places. But as you also may know, I have resigned from or retired from BayCHI and left it to in these good hands. And
We check in on you. We don't, you will not be forgotten.
But in the last 10 years, say, I've been, or a little more than that, I've been working on olive oil. And this is a product in the physical realm, as you may know, and it's something good to eat. So when we got the ranch in Livermore, which is 182 acres, not all of it is flat enough to even plant trees on, but we've got 40 acres under cultivation now, and we are winning awards, but we'll get to that soon. So I just wanted to sort of walk you through that. And I feel like this particular project that I'm going to talk about today really does combine all 3 of those different interests and career efforts, vocational
Yeah,
efforts.
I do not understand the olive oil.
You don't understand? Well,
No, and I probably won't.
well, I sometimes think of it as heart, head, and gut.
There
you
you
know,
go. Okay. fine.
those are the 3 things. Let's take a quiz about olive oil, and you can respond by, I have to then show that little thing that I wasn't showing. Well, Edwin, you can see everybody's votes, right? When they're gonna,
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna ask them to vote, and you can give me the count, right?
We can just do it in the chat. How do you want to do it? I know.
Well, I'm not doing that. I
No.
already wrote the questions out.
Yeah.
I did it a different way.
Yeah, we're just gonna, we'll just put your answers in the chat, people.
You can say A, B, C, or D. The question number 1 is, what proportion of the world's olive oil is produced in the United States? Okay, so Nikki says C. Okay. Mariana says C. You say
Let's
C.
see what they say.
So we're getting 20% and what is the
I said-
online folks?
I
say?
said 10%.
You said, Ted says 10%. What do you say, Edwin? What does our team online say?
What do people say on time? Right. I see a 45%, and I see a C question mark, which is 20%.
Uh-huh.
And we have a B, which is
Good.
45%. It's all over the map.
All over the place, but nobody guessed A, so that's good. The correct answer is 10%. Yay, Ted. Okay. So
I like to win.
we produce only 10% of the world's olive oil in the United States, and we are a net importer of olive oil. I didn't put all those statistics in. Okay, here's question number 2. What proportion of olive oil from the United States is produced in California? Can you give me an answer, please?
I'm gonna, just a moment.
Nikki's there. She wants to go A. Mariana? She's going 90%.
I put B,
Okay, Ted's going for
but
45.
I think I'm wrong.
Okay. Okay, Edwin says 45%. And what do our online companions say?
A.
Pete says A. Okay, Pete in the room says A. Okay, well, the answer is 90%.
Wow.
Well, and just as here's a fun bonus question: can you name any of the 7 other states where olive oil is produced in
Oh
the
my
United
gosh.
States? Yep, Oregon is correct. Arizona, I believe, is correct. I'm not sure. Go ahead. Nevada, I don't think so. Too dry and too cold. But Georgia and Florida, southern,
Yeah.
think Texas, think southern states. It's got to be warm enough. What? Florida seems like it's too damp. I know. Well, let's just keep going. Here's question 3. Another proportion. What proportion of olive oil produced in California comes from orchards planted as hedgerows?
You have to tell us what a
So
hedgerow is.
hedgerows are where you plant the trees close together in line, and that you let the tree branches grow together into one big hedge. And so that makes it easier for mechanical. Yeah, you can do a mechanical mechanical trimming. You can do mechanical picking.
I say it's A. Other people are saying A.
Okay, so you think B, okay. And Edwin is going for yeah, okay. Okay, we got a lot of consensus
This
around.
is not how you do it.
That's correct. Now, Ted just observed, having been at our place, that we do not plant in hedgerows. And why not? Because our land is not flat enough. You need nice flat land for the machines to travel up and down the rows, right? And so in this case, we have hilly land, and we planted traditionally 16 feet apart and facing in a particular direction. The rows face so that they get maximum east to west sun. Anyway, all these things I didn't know about agriculture, but yes, 90%. Now, what does that mean? That means that we and the other people like us who produce small quantities of olive oil relative to the big producers. I mean, it's a lot of olive oil, I'm not going to drink it all myself, but relative to the big producers, we are producing relatively small stuff. But the other interesting factoid that you probably are not aware of is that there are only somewhere between 4 and 6 varieties that are cultivated as hedgerows. And so all the small producers like us can try out all the other varieties. There's like 300 some varieties of olives. And so we have 4 varieties at our house, at our place. None of them is one of those that's planted in hedgerows. So
Is that how you get to be award-winning?
I hope so. I mean, that's not the only way, because the people who do the big stuff, they get awards too. It's kind of like heirloom olive, but anyway. So here we are. We're not planted as hedgerows like the rest of that. So we're 10% of the 90% of California, but that's only 10% of the world's olive oil. And so we're like a tiny little proportion there. So here's this funny one. If California were a country rather than a state, what order would it rank in the amount, that is the volume of olive oil imported? That is how much but it's like how much do we produce relative to the big imported country amounts? So would we be number 1, or would we be number 10 or whatever? It's how, what's not really, California doesn't get imported to the States.
We got an A and A, and I'm a C, and then there's a B.
You're going a lot of B's, a few
I said
outliers.
C, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
let's see. So here we go, number 4. So we'd be 4th. I think a lot of B's were there, right? So Italy, Spain, and Tunisia beat us in the amount of olive oil that the United States imports relative to the amount of olive oil that California produces, right?
Because California's based.
Italy and Spain.
It's on the other
Well,
side.
but just the other side.
What's fascinating about that
And the
is,
next one is Greece after that.
yeah, but what's fascinating about that is that compared to the rest of the country, we're eating a lot more oil, is what you're saying. A lot more
No, we
olive.
aren't. We're producing more oil,
But we're
and
also-
distributing it around the United States.
I'm sorry, I thought this was the importing that you're talking about right now.
Right, but we aren't importing anything from California because we aren't really another country.
I understand. So we're
the-
importing,
We are producing, we are offering the fourth largest volume.
Yeah.
Compared to all the
Oh,
rest of the
okay.
places that produce olive oil outside of
Wow.
the States, okay?
Wow.
So the one after us is Greece, whereas I think of Greece as being a big olive oil producer, right? California is pretty big too. I'm not going to show you all the maps of who's the net importers, and there's a cute map about
But I mean,
that, but it's a little.
Persia used to do lots of olive oil.
Who, Persia?
Per-
Well, I don't think they ever did as much.
What? Yeah.
We call it Iran. Okay. All right. We're jumping now out of the quiz and we're going to the next section. Are there any questions before we go on? Or are you just
How does
oohing and
this
ahhing?
have to do with user interface? Oh,
Getting
document
closer.
design. Ah, that's, okay, good.
Okay. Are you with me now, Ted?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Last summer of 24, the Linguistics Career Launch, which is a amorphous organization, kind of housed within the Linguistics Society. I'm going to talk about that in the next slide. But anyway, we offered two courses as add-on to the main program. So if you paid the main program amount, you got everything. And then if you paid an extra, you could take one or the other of the course. You couldn't take both courses because there were only two. And we wanted to let a lot of people have that. So I had already volunteered, knowing I was going to teach this course at the March 24, meeting of all the olive oil aficionados through the California Olive Oil Council. I showed up for that meeting and said, is anybody else bothered by the SEAL certification kit? And several people groaned, and I said, okay, I am hereby announcing that I am taking this project on for the purposes of this summer course in how to design a document. And I hope to have in the fall a candidate for you to substitute for the existing thing. So here's the little bit more about the Linguistics Career Launch, because I know only Mary Parks and Leilani have been participating in it so far. That's the people I saw in the audience today who are familiar with it, and they will correct me if I've left any parts out. So we're a programmatic effort to help students and faculty and administrators and industry leaders also learn more about careers that welcome linguists beyond their roles in academia. And we're working with the Linguistic Society of America, as I already said. So LCL 24 ran for 2 weeks, 10 business days. Our course ran an extra week because we had the customer deliverable to produce, and that was when they could see us. So the main program had workshops about career management. That's things like, how's a CV different from a resume? And how do you use LinkedIn to your advantage for networking? And how do you create a portfolio piece? All those kinds of things. We had career panels where different people in different specializations, either a group talked about something or individuals were interviewed about their specialties. And there are terrific numbers of specialties. The ones that you're probably most aware of or familiar with are things like the alphabet soup: AI, ML, LLM, NLP, right? LSMFT. Only the older ones among you will get that joke. It was an advertising slogan. Anyway, but there is a whole world, as many of us here in this assembly know, that UX, conversation design, naming and branding, technical documentation, internationalization and translation, and probably 16 other things that I'm not thinking of now. You can put them in the chat, are ways that linguists are earning a living with their undergraduate, master's, or PhD out in the world, not having jobs in academia, but they're not very well known. And part of that is that faculty are so, can I say, ignorant about opportunities. And most of the faculty in linguistics have not had a chance to work outside of academia. They worked really hard to get jobs in academia, and they're doing that whole career course. And so they are unaware of how to help the students. and unaware of how to have the handshake with the career office, who is unaware of what the hell is linguistics, right? So the career office is ignorant, and they don't know where the graduates of a linguistic program might fit, and they so give generic information. And we're touting that get your faculty to help the career office build its chops so that they can give us good jobs, right? We gave a few skills workshops. We had a lot of networking and office hours, which included people who are not enrolled, but career linguists, people out in the world, come back and do the networking events with us. So you get a lot of the students who are enrolled in the summer course then get to meet a whole bunch of people 2 or 3 times during the course of those 2 weeks for an hour and a half, and just go room, it's 10-minute dating, 5-minute dating, whatever. Go from table to table and meet people, all virtual. So none of this was held in person. And then there were these 2 courses hanging off the side. Okay, so I gave effectively 12 hours of instruction, all live and remote. And we had people from all over the US, several from Canada, and there may have been somebody else there from outside the US. I can't remember right now, but no, there's nobody from the class in there. Okay, so I'll just focus on these couple headings here. Lots of things are documents, right? You don't have to be a white paper to be a document. And in fact, if you look on the olive oil boxes back there, I've labeled them in a way that I can separate out the field blend from the frantoio without writing field blend and frantoio. So I just do FB on the one box, and I do F in a circle, so it's redundant. You get a double check there. And that's a kind of document, right, that we've designed. But for longer, more narrative kinds of things, we want to talk about principles like bite, snack, meal. Anybody familiar with that aphorism? I'm getting blank stares in the room. That's good. Okay. This is a way in which some people who are interested in docs think about how to present information, but it's the same that's true on the web. You want to be able to do this too. It's like headline, but meaningful headline. That's the bite. And then if you want to know more, you open it up and you get a couple sentences. That's the snack. And if you really want to know more, you get the long dissertation, which is the meal, right? I mean, not necessarily dissertation, but a whole article or a whole paper or something. So the idea being,
Or video.
let people get as much as they want when they want it. Don't overwhelm them with the meal first. And I think that I've cited here the field guides from the Center for Civic Design, and I wish I had them in my hand because I love to show them off. If we have a little time, depending on how long things go, I can show them to you. But the link in this, if you look up the Center for Civic Design, which is civicdesign.org, they have on their first menu item a pull down, and the field guides are in there. And the field guides are, have you seen these little scout booklets? They're probably 4x3 maybe, and they're a little 12 or 15 page paper, and they've got like craft paper on the outside, so it's, it looks very inviting and easy to consume. And so the field guides are because the Center for Civic Design works specifically with an audience of election officials that at the county level or the state or the city level, they were very interested in providing them with easy to consume design guidelines. And so things like don't use all caps, have mixed case, it's easier for people to read. I probably could do a whole bunch of them. The thing that they did was that I think is so clever, and I got to join in for the last 3 or 4 of those. You can pass those up here too.
Can you change?
They have, each little booklet has a different title, making documents that voters can educate themselves with, doing public information about elections. I'm not giving the right titles, but accessibility in election activities.
Writing instructions voters understand.
Writing instructions voters understand. Thank you, Mariana. So the idea is each booklet has 10 hints, and there are 10 booklets. And so there you got 100 hints. If you say to the election official or somebody who's not a UX person, I have 100 ideas for you of how to improve it. That's way too much. So you give it to them in small doses, right? 10 at a time. And they don't have to consume all 10 at once. They can just sort of breeze through, oh, this one looks interesting, you know, whichever they are. The reason Mariana is able to do this is she followed the link. And the other part is the Center for Civic Design is very tuned into blind and deaf and physically disabled people, so that they want to make all their materials consumable by anybody. And therefore, all these little booklets exist as 10-page documents online in exactly the same format, except you don't have to handle them. And if you're blind, you know, they aren't braille. You don't have to braille them. We've got them online, and they are readable by what do you call it? The
Speech reader.
Speech readers. Yeah.
Which is good because only 10% of blind people use Braille.
Right. A very small proportion of today, smaller and smaller proportion are using Braille. It's true. All right. I did introduce the idea of scent of information because I thought that was very much related to the bite snack meal idea, but a different take on it. And we talked also about readability versus usability, because the kind of documents we're making, and this particular document that I want them to revise, is a document about getting a task done. It's not poetry. It's not literature. It's about you want to complete a task, and therefore perfectly suited to these kinds of techniques.
Would you call it functional linguistics?
I don't think it has anything to, I mean, it's not, no.
Okay.
Functional linguistics actually is a technical term and it means something different.
Okay. So I'm asking.
No, I think that this is a way of introducing plain language to people and to and letting them practice. Now, the interesting thing about that is, and I don't want to take too much time.
You are the speaker.
I am the speaker,
Okay.
but I don't want to take too much time on this one point, but I think it's worth underscoring. Plain language and the Plain Language Association, and there's a whole bunch of, you know, organizations around it now, is not the same as basic English. Basic English works with an impoverished or a limited vocabulary, so that you are able to express a lot of things, but only with a very limited vocabulary, like 500 words or 1,000 words, something like that. Plain language, you are allowed to use any kind of words, but you want to use more frequent words because you want it to be accessible to everybody. So I read today on Facebook, some friend of mine said, I learned a new word today, tautology. And I thought, oh, I've known that word for a long time, but I am older than you, David. Okay. But that wasn't it. I mean, I also, you know, I have a PhD, doesn't have a PhD. I have a lot of, you know, other experience that taught me that word earlier. Great. He's got that word now. Tautology is not the kind of word you're going to introduce in a plain language document. Okay. It's too low frequency and too highfalutin language. So yes. Edwin has a question. I see a hand raised. Okay.
Is there a threshold at which you sort of like consider, oh, it's seen this percentage of the time, we consider this now plain?
This is a judgment call. This is a judgment call. I would be nice if there were such a thing, but I don't think that most people are going to have to look up frequencies of words, and they're just going to, part of it is you can test. Is this word familiar to your test subjects, you know? Okay, I'm going on to Usability 101, which is on the right-hand side of the screen. So I, ahead of the course, started trying to recruit members to participate in this activity.
Remind us of what COOC is.
The COOC is the California Olive Oil Council. Not to be confused with, get ready, Ted, the OOCC, which is the Olive Oil Commission of California. So the OOCC is the state sanctioned, the state mandated body. And it's particularly, it's a requirement that the big producers, big meaning more than 5,000 gallons a year, and some of them are into the 1 million gallons a year, okay? That's big. That's how you get to 9. That's how you get to 10% of the world's olive oils. Not because of me, it's because of the big producers. Anyway, so I was trying to recruit members or prospects or former members or whatever. How did we do that? I mean, with difficulty, but we got a few people. One of the students in the course is a faculty member somewhere else, and she was familiar with the Think Aloud protocol and was willing to be the moderator. Please go all the way, Kristen. We taught people how to use a screener to make sure that people were qualified to participate. We talked about how to ask for consent so that they knew that we were collecting data from them. And we talked about how do we analyze these data besides the old-fashioned way. And some of you may recall Smita, right?
Oh, yeah.
Papalo, who I worked with a lot. She was my backup while I was program chair and had a lot of great ideas and really came in. It was really very helpful to have somebody with me.
And she's still here.
And she's often here. I don't know if she's here tonight, but Smita joined us from Intuit because she has access to all those online tools that I, as an independent and semi-retired person, don't have access to. So we got to use, I can't remember which one we were using, Figma something, or it was one of those online. So we could do all the affinitizing and the arguing about which is the more important quote, and does it belong in two places, and how do you handle that? You know, all those kinds of things that you who have run usability studies before are familiar with, and these people had never had an orientation to it. It was not unlike some kinds of psycholinguistic or sociolinguistic experiments that people do with collecting real data from real people. And I will say that one of the things that I know that I can count on linguists to come to this task with is they are good interviewers. They know how not to lead the witness, right? They know how to ask neutrally and how to adopt the person's language if they, you know, they don't use my language, but they have another expression there. Use their expression. Let it be their terminology that we're working on and their attitude and their, you know, their whole perspective toward the document that we want to capture. So however they refer to those things, there isn't a right way from us, for sure. There's a right way from COOC, but then there's a right way from the users too. Let me go to accessibility basics. I felt like this was a great opportunity. We want, I mean, I'm from the camp that says everybody who's a citizen should be able to vote and have their vote counted and know that their vote, that what they did to get their vote onto the paper or the page or whatever, the machine, is going to be counted toward the candidates and the positions that they support. And for some people, it's just a thing of wearing reading glasses and they didn't bring their reading glasses with them. But for other people, there may be all kinds of other issues. And so when people come to vote, you know, the team of almost volunteer poll workers has to be able to figure out how to support a voter who doesn't use the equipment in the usual way.
Wheelchair.
Yeah,
Parkinson's.
some kind of mobility issue, whatever it is, right? Okay, and so web wins over print for some audiences, especially those with visual impairments. Color blindness is the most common thing, so you can't have color be your sole differentiator, as everybody around the room is nodding with me, but that's not obvious to people who haven't thought about UX before. Structured text is important. For example, you want a hierarchy, you want the outline to be obvious. You want things like line length and white space and line spacing and emphasis to be obvious to anybody who's using it in whatever modality they're using your documents. And so from the audience standpoint, it's eyes, ears, attention versus whatever the current fashion is. Here's the fashion that I'm talking about, that I'm rejecting. There's a fashion right now, and that has been the case for several years, of gray backgrounds and very thin fonts. So it makes it really hard to read for people with old eyes. I'm talking about me, but I think it's really hard to read for everybody. And some people don't notice how hard it is because they've got young, healthy eyes. But if you want everybody to be able to vote and vote clearly, then you have to produce the materials in a way that they can consume it without
16-point or bigger fonts.
Well, it's the size of the font relative to the thing, and and the weight of the font relative to all the other stuff, and the spacing and how close it is to the mark you have to make, and all that kind of stuff. So there's a whole bunch of things having to do with physical space, weight, and all these dimensions of fonts that people are aware of but didn't think that they could control. Okay, next, or last here. So our goal was to improve the California Olive Oil Council's seal kit. That is, they give you, if you pass, if your olive oil is tested to be extra virgin, then you can get a sticker for your bottles, for your labels, that says extra virgin and the year on it. Okay. And so they want if you want to get the COOC's seal, then you have to become a member, submit your oil for testing, both qualitative and quantitative. And then they'll examine those results and say, yes, you are within the standard for the chemical, and you are hitting all the high points on the taste, and you'd have none of the defects that we're worried about in either of those two situations, the chemistry and the taste. Okay. We don't say taste, sorry, sensory panel, because it's smell, it's aroma as well as taste. Mouthfeel, all those things enter into it. So the seal kit was, for a 23-page document, which had been relatively unchanged for the past 10 years, because I've been doing this for almost 10 years, right? It has multiple tasks in a single document. It has interaction across various pages. So on page 8, there's a place you have to sign, and then there's another place on page 10 you have to initial that you agree with this, and so on. So these interactions are not all bundled together in the original document. They are spread as they grew. So my question was, what's the user profile of the members of the COOC who have to fill out these forms? And what's the responsibility of the support staff? How do the support staff who work in the office? Very few, because COOC has been going through its own financial mishigas. That's Yiddish for craziness, over the past several years. And so their management's been changing. They've only had one person in the office versus the ED who is out doing other things. So they don't have a lot of people to support the members who need help with completing the seal kit. And then one of our questions was, who are our competitors? Not necessarily in olive oil, but in other food certifications, right? And so kosher and GMO came up, both of which have like a first time you have to fill out a 2 or a 4-page paper. And then when you come back for your next year, you can refer to that and you only have to fill out the 1 page. That's seriously different from a 23-page document, right? Which is dense. All right, I'm going to go ahead. So I think, and I hope people will join me in reminding everybody about the skills that linguists have as I start to talk about some of these other tasks. So the quotes that I have here on this page are from producers and staff at the producers. So like the gluten-free and non-GMO compliance process. When you're at a big producer, there's a staff person who does it. It isn't one of the owners or one of the big managers. You've got a staff person who runs their lab, and that person will fill out the GMO, non-GMO, and the kosher and the gluten-free forms, right? But this guy at the top, why does he enter and why does he get his certification? He says, I want to win the bronze bear at the California State Fair. He wants recognition for how great his olive oil is. And that's his big goal, is the high prize at the California State Fair. And but several people reported to us during their discussions with us that the seal kit feels like a fire hose of information. That doesn't sound like much fun to work with. Okay, so I've already said this twice, but I'll say it again. Our project for the class is revising the California Olive Oil Council's seal certification kit for extra virgin olive oil. Ripe for revision. Now, we did introduce the double diamond process, but we weren't going to get all the way through it because we were just working on the revising of the the existing document, and we weren't going all the way to development yet. So we were working on discovery, like, can we get feedback on the current thing, this document? It could be a service, it could be the process that they're giving feedback on. And we got it from staff and board members and producers. And then we defined by creating a draft of, or a new draft of our document. And what we were hearing was they're probably changing the process too. So we were working with a moving target. We just said, we're going to look at 23's kit and we're going to improve that one. And if they make changes in 24, we won't catch up fast enough, but at least the principle will be there. So the idea then is you get feedback on your draft, you revise and confirm that you didn't screw anything up by what you revised, and then you iterate a few times, and with the revision and the trying, and eventually you get to someplace where it's the next revision isn't going to be enough better to make it worth everybody's while to go through that process, right? Okay, so here are some of the skills that I'm aware of that people in linguistics, but also probably in other social sciences and humanities have. So this is bigger than linguistics, but we were focused on people in linguistics. But I can foresee a time when the LCL would be the, humanities and social sciences.
Cognitive scientists.
Right, cognitive scientists, all fine. So we listened to a board member. We listened to a member-facing staff person. We collected data. We didn't really listen. She sent us a memo. And we listened to several members who are producers who had to use this form. We did a lot of observation of the differences between the large and the small producers. We did some analysis by comparing with these other certifications and looking for common themes across the producers of their complaints and their wishes and what documents they like. We revised. And then we reconciled the info from the producers, the staff, and the board that we had collected. And then we had to assemble our findings to make a recommendation to the board. And we presented, including a diagram of the process, which doesn't exist in the original form, but I felt was really important. Because I felt like, there are actually two processes hidden in this document for two different groups of people. It's the same process, except one group gets to skip a part. So that was not, it constantly gets in the way. And people say, do I have to fill out this part too? And I'm thinking, how many hits is this woman getting in the office, right? So here's one way that the students captured what was different about the original versus the revised version. And there was a lengthy preamble, for example, and a lot of prose and a lot of lengthy paragraphs and a lot of legalese in there in the original. And those were things that were viewed negatively. But when we showed them the revised thing, where we had broken up the content by theme and we consolidated the form, the things that had to be acted on into a separate area of the document, that we used plain language, that we tried to incorporate tables and diagrams and lists. And we actually had a lot of white space. So even though the students came up with a revised document that was 22 pages, but it was really like 6 pages of the stuff, and then the license agreement, and then the, did you have your checklist ready? Have you done all? So all the rest of that was supplementary information. But they viewed the changes that we made positively. Okay. Now, this was the thing about collaborating on the analysis. So I just took a little slide out of that very large space that we were in to show that, people were making stickies and clumping them and finding themes from their work. Okay. Adoption of improvements. Did our project influence the COOC to adjust the SEAL certification kit? And here's the organization of our report. And so I think that's a familiar organization to people who've written usability study reports, right? And now let's draw attention to this. The COOC did not invite us. We invited ourselves, right? I volunteered because of feedback from other members that I heard at the meeting saying, yes, it's very confusing. Yes, please, why is it all this legalese? Yes. So I felt like I had a mandate from the members, even if I didn't have an invitation from the board, right? And besides, this is a student project, so you can reject the whole thing and it won't hurt our feelings. We could say that, right? And they hired a new executive director about the same time, and she started about the same time as our course started. So she had been there a whole 2 weeks before we gave her this great plan to go with the future, right? So what do you think the reasonable outcome from that meeting would be? I'll get back to you. I think that was probably what it was. Thank you so much for sharing that work with us. I sent her the revised document just to show her, and I sent her the slide deck that we had created to say these are the principles that we were working on, and these are the things we were trying to fix because we felt like there were complaints. So here's the diagram, and I broke it into two parts because it's too long to fit on a horizontal screen. But you can see that there are several steps here, and they're color coded and la la la. I'm not doing this for you to read the whole thing, just to get the impression that there are multiple steps, and you know, there's a lot of decision tree stuff going on in here. Okay. So I figured that there were three possible outcomes. One is thanks but no thanks, which is sort of the one you gave, Ted. And then the second one, they could say, oh, we fixed our processes and now we're following the OOCC's lead and we're going to use their technique for getting the quantitative and qualitative results. And they might have said, let's make sure the document reflects that process clearly. And they might have said to us, oh, we're even more ambitious than what you proposed. We want to really make a fully digital solution, and everything should be filled out online and signed online, and it's going to reflect the change processes. And we want to confirm that members are able to complete it with ease and with minimal help from the staff. Well, that we got the thank you, we'll call you, don't call us response. However, that was right before, so that was August that we were getting that response. In October, they came out with the new seal kit for 24 harvest, right? And nothing that we suggested had changed. What had changed was they adopted this other system where they were not running their own taste test. They were relying on other sensory panels to give back to the original producer feedback that they could then include with their application for the seal. So I filled out the seal kit, you know, as I do every year when I remember in time. No, so I mean, I have filled it out. We've been harvesting since 2016. There was 1 year when we did not harvest because there was too little fruit for the amount of money it would take to bring a crew in and then pay the miller. And we just said, it was not a good year. We're not going to harvest. Next year will be better. And it was. So I've done this like 8 times. I cannot remember year over year what I'm supposed to do. And the way in which they had changed things did not help me. Am I supposed to still include 2 blank bottles for each variety of oil that I'm submitting or not now because you're not doing the testing? So I got confused. Can you believe it? And so I wrote to Suzanne, the executive director, and I said, Suzanne, I think I skipped a step or something. Do you have everything you need from me? She says, no, you didn't pay this one, but you did pay this amount. And there's still some signatures that you haven't included. Oh, okay, I can fix that. Okay. So I was getting to her, right? When everything was in, after they had, you know, processed things, I wrote her a little note and I said, Suzanne, I may be the only person who's having such trouble with this form. And if that's the case, just put it off to me, and I'm aging and, you know, la, la, la. But if you had to support a dozen other people like me, it might be time to consider some of the revisions again, or reconsider the recommendations that we had made. And she said, I think I should get back to you closer to October of 25. And my answer is to myself, let's talk in July.
Implementation.
Yeah, a little implementation time. And especially because they've changed the process, at which point I can say, let's go, especially if we're going to go all digital, we're going to need some help to test that, to make sure it works, even before we find out whether our, I mean, there are a lot of other small producers who go to the COOC because they honor small producers. And there are people like me who are on their second or third career, the aging eyes and aging brains. And, you know, and who knows, I mean, I'm pretty digitally fluent, but I don't think all my age mates are. And I don't expect the people who are worrying about agriculture to also be super good at all the digital stuff. So at some point, if they decide they want help to digitize everything, I think it's going to take longer than, let's talk in October. So yeah, July. I'm going for July to start that conversation again. So we're up in the air. The answer is to be continued. Have check back with me. Okay. Oh, we're getting to
Here's a
the
question.
tasting. Yes.
Who does their document design historically, and how do they, what's their process?
I think they mostly talk to their attorney, and then whoever the executive director or somebody in the office who's
Just
good
does
at
it.
Word just does it. And they had no, I don't think they had any idea about how to ask your audience for feedback that you can actually use to improve the thing. I don't think that's general knowledge. Okay. So, and that's fine. I mean, let me.
No, it
give-
isn't, but
Well,
that's
no,
okay.
I mean, it just has to be easy enough for people to use, right?
Which is hard to get to.
It's
That's
hard
the
to
whole
get
point.
to, absolutely. But let me give you an example from my experience with the Center for Civic Design again, because that's the most recent thing before I, moved over to olive oil full time. In the elections in 16, we got a little bit ahead of that because what we wanted to do was suggest to each of the counties in California that the document that comes out, if you're a voter in California, and I assume many of the people on the call are, if you're a voter in California, you get two little booklets. One comes from the county and one comes from the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State is covering all the statewide issues. The county is covering, in their booklet, they're covering all the county level things, which can include assembly members, right? Because that's, if you vote a single assembly member, that is person who's located in your county or more, or two counties or whatever. Whereas if you vote for senator, everybody in the state has the same Senate candidates, right? So that goes to the Secretary of State. It's a little confusing and not everybody realizes they get two booklets. We proposed from the Center for Civic Design that there be a kind of uniform template for that county level voter guide. And we did a draft, and we used Franklin County, which is not a county in California, but we made everything look real. And we said there has to be a table. The front cover should include this information, because we had done a lot of research prior to this, asking people, what's in your county booklet? Just to say, don't consult your county booklet. What do you think should be in there? I mean, what do you remember from that? Or if you don't remember it, it's what you think ought to be in there, right? What time is the voting place open till? When do you have to be there? I mean, new voters, new citizens don't realize when it says that the polls are open from 7 in the morning until 8 at night, they then say, oh, am I supposed to be there the whole time? No, you can come anytime between those hours and stay as long as you need to. I mean, I've had somebody stay in a polling place for 2 hours trying to figure out how she was going to vote. That's okay. We got room.
In some counties it is.
Yeah, I mean, if everybody's going to do that, it's not going to work.
Right. But there's limits in many counties.
Of how long you can stay? Yeah, I don't think there are in California, but I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, 15 minutes in many places.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, anyway, so what we did was we made this template, and then we ran 3 trainings, north, center, and south, and we got 40 of the counties, of the 52 counties in California, or 58 counties in California, 4 representatives of 40 counties showed up, including some really big ones, and that hadn't had, high touch with us yet. And so I taught people why we made it this way. And I said, this is all in, it's a Word template. You all know how to use Word. We didn't try to do InDesign or any fancy kind of software. We wanted to be the most familiar possible. We gave them lots of imagery that would be useful, that would all be standardized then, of things like, how do you insert this? How do you insert this? How do you insert this? You know, because you have different kinds of voting machines and so on. And realized, I mean, somebody came back to me 2 days after the training, showed me what they had done and said, what else do I have to do? And I said, I have only 2 tiny little revisions here. You did everything right, just about, you know, and it's good enough. So I felt like that was a good proof of concept that a template is, with a little bit of instruction, usable by a county official who is not an expert in document design. Okay, so you got to give them the right materials in a format they can consume, and then, you know, let them at it, because they want to not have voters make errors too. They want everybody to vote the way they intended and for it to count, right?
And
So-
they don't want people to come and ask them lots and lots and lots of questions.
Right. They don't want you to get stuck and ask a bunch of questions during that process. Exactly. More questions?
So are we moving to the question period? or
Yes,
the-
I think we're moving to the questions.
So thank you for this. And I see this beautiful bottle of olive oil. Thank you for the presentation. And I'm sure we'll have lots of questions about the document design. And what I think was most interesting is when you're talking about what you can give people that aren't document designers for a living, that makes them be able to take the value of the expertise of people that have spent a lot of time developing a document design template. And this idea of a template is an interesting one, because that allows you to have something that's generally helpful without having to look at every single voting situation, for example, in that case, and have to make them themselves. Is that
Right.
right?
And yeah, one of the things that I've seen in some of the California voter guides, they put in like they have an extra page, right? Before they're going, they want something to start on a right-hand page, so they have an extra page on a left-hand side of a booklet. And they put in these pictures of things like the garage. If you want, we don't have that anymore, but in 16, we still had it. If you want to be a voting place, get in touch with your, you know, registrar of voters, and we'll make arrangements with you. We don't have that anymore. California has adopted a voting centers model rather than an individual precinct model, which is also actually very usable, because it means you can be anywhere in your county and vote and have the right ballot.
But back to that page.
Back to that page.
but-
So we were recommending, don't put in an advertisement.
For 2 reasons at least.
What?
One is it stops people and they might not get to the next page.
That's one reason. And
Right.
another reason is it was always in this really jarringly different format, right? When they were left on their own to their own devices, they would use, you know, like clip art and stuff.
But that's an aesthetic thing. There's probably more to it than what you're saying
It's
than
an
that.
aesthetic thing, but it also takes you out of if you want to have a template, then it gives a uniform kind of branding. This is the official document.
And
it's
why is
got
it
the-
bad to change that branding in the middle?
I would say the lack of uniformity can cause some doubt in the voter's mind about, is this really the official thing? So you want to have a consistent look and feel to the document for an election. Similarly, I think for the seal certification kit, you want to have a consistent voice and look and all those different aspects to it. But you don't want it to read like legalese, because then it's not plain language and it's very unapproachable, and you get that complaint about a fire hose of information. So I heard that comment, fire hose of information, and that spoke to me about the density of the text on the page. There was no breathing room for the text, right? And it also spoke to me about the kind of language that was being used, which was too close to, you know, difficulty of processing. And yeah.
So people online, please think of something you want to ask, you can put it just in the chat, and I'll call on you if I can. Certainly the people in the room, is there anything? I mean, there's a very broad ranging set of topics here. I could ask more questions, but I think I should let other people speak. Does anybody want to make a comment or ask a question?
Please check the chat because I'm
We are,
not seeing it.
yeah.
Nothing in the chat
Yeah.
yet.
So I think this point that you just made, Nancy, is a really, really powerful point. And this, it's in this particular case, what people might not realize is there's more than just the federal and the local. There's also League of Women Voters and a pile of advertisements from every possible official, anybody that's trying
Anybody with an attitude.
anything with an attitude, right? Which is, yeah, that's trying to get the election. So what is the criticalness of its authenticity, but also, do you want to speak a little bit to how you may the local election documents and the state might want to work with illegal women voters or other people that are trying to give information, and what problems you've thought of or seen in those regards?
I don't really have a strong, sorry, am I?
No, we're
Microphone.
talking among ourselves.
There are many different advocacy organizations, including the League of Women Voters, which even though we think of it as a very neutral organization, it has a position, and but they're also very interested in getting people to vote. Everybody who's eligible to vote, they want to see vote. But then there's all these churches, and they have their positions, and they want to make sure all their parishioners know what the party line is. Sorry, what the church line is.
Which is more ammunition for what you said, which is
right.
that this document wants to stand apart from all of that other stuff.
Right, for the voting stuff. But in the case, so we're on a different genre now, right? As we're going to the SEAL kit, it's not a voting thing, but it is a document on which you need to take action, or you need to use to take action. And so that's a set of instructions for how to do that. But it's not, at least from my report to you, I think you can understand that it's not always very clear what action I'm supposed to take. And so having that extra page, which is an accurate checklist for this year's harvest, can help.
So we have a couple of online questions.
Sure.
Erwin, do you want to
Speak for yourself.
unmute yourself, or do you want me to ask?
Sure, I'll do it.
Great.
Imagine how complicated this was for olive oil. The world is moving rapidly to AI adoption and deployment with corresponding communications and documentation of various sorts. So what do you see as the implications to improve the AI documentation or AI adoption documentation?
I don't know that I have an opinion.
Erwin, do you want to make a stab at what you're thinking about? Because
well, I mean, I think we're starting outside of even in the technical community, but outside of the normal technical community, people have emotions about AI. They're scared of it. They're excited about it. They don't know how to do it. There's all these dynamics operating simultaneously.
500 million people use it daily at this point.
Well, but they're using it mainly for question asking, which they know how to do already. But if you're deploying it in an organization and you want to get the employees to align and use it properly, you're going to probably have various kinds of documentation and communications to get that done. So what do you see as the benefits of this kind of approach in creating that kind of information?
Well, okay, here's a quick reaction to what you're saying. And that is, from what I've been reading lately, a lot of people are able to recognize the current AI narrative style, right? And they can tell, and some people say it's the M dash, but I think it's more the whole rhetorical style that they're using. And I think that you can teach AI how to do plain language. You can teach AI how to format. You can teach AI how to, emphasize things. So the fact that people may deploy AI to improve this particular document, the seal kit, is not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing by itself. So I don't know that, yes, I agree that people have strong feelings about AI produced.
But you made several concrete suggestions. And I think that prompt engineering allows you to form the responses that AI is going to have. And quite frankly, all of the things that the linguists have to offer about document design, about dialogue design are things that we're speaking to and are relevant to working with AI just as much as everything else. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have Mary Parks asking another question. Mary, would you like to bring to speak?
Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Mary.
Yeah, it was really it's interesting and fun to look at the problem that you were trying to solve. And very much related to Erwin's question was just document design itself. It's clear, like in the process that you're having, there's a certain amount of human research that is required, but outside of those human research type things, what do you think generative technologies, what is the future of generative technology impacting document design itself?
Great question, Mary. I have no idea.
So
What do you think? Give me some choices.
Oh, well, let's say that it runs from, maybe it's a can of worms. I mean, it's obvious that people would like to use it. I guess what I'm asking is how effective do you think it is in solving the kinds of problems
I'm going to jump in
to
again.
solve?
Let me say
Yeah.
one quick
Please.
thing, which is I've also been reading about people talking about using AI as substitutes for actual people in the usability studies or whatever kind of research. That gives me the willies.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a technical term. Is everybody familiar with that?
Yeah. But I think it's really back to some of the things we've been talking about, which is that designing prompt engineering and representation of your questions and your answers is completely important, regardless if you're talking to a person. It's back to interview skills
Mhm.
as well, and it's also very critical for you to recognize when you've done a poor job of that, and that's the reason you're getting bad answers. A lot of people are getting bad answers from generative AI because they don't craft their questions well.
They don't realize that how much you need to be able to direct the AI.
Yeah, which is back to your linguistic skills, I think, really, again. And so that's I'm just going to,
Yeah.
this is the
So
talk.
I mean, it's an interesting question, Mary, and I'll be intrigued to watch what happens. But I think without, I'm not sure what the generative part's going to be.
Yeah.
Right.
So we have
Right,
another-
and there's even a political side to it as well of just, thinking about what, the sorts of efforts that are being made by Doge, that's just, it's actually really related to a lot of really important things happening in the world right now, I think.
So
yeah.
Document
we have
design
another
itself.
comment.
Okay. Thanks, Mary.
We aren't going to get into Doge too much tonight. We have Lilali, and a comment. Would you like to speak it, Lilali, or do you want me to?
Oh, I can say it. It's just
Thank you.
that I've been, while listening to Nancy's talk, I've been working on my portfolio.
You need to turn it up a little
bit.
bit. Can you talk a little louder?
Yes, give me 1 second.
Okay.
Is this better? Or is it still pretty quiet?
I think we're okay.
We barely.
Give me 1 second.
Don't worry. Just go for it.
All right.
Nancy will repeat what you say.
Okay. So I've been working on my portfolio. I work as a conversation designer. And so it just made me laugh because as Nancy was talking about this new trend of thin font, gray background, my portfolio is thin font, white background because that's what I was seeing in other portfolios as I was working on these. And so I was like, oh, she has a good point. Let me go change the font. So it's easier to read for people. But it was just something that I felt really called out in the moment. I was like, oh, she's absolutely right. Let me go change this.
Okay, good. I think some of those little hints that are in those 10 booklets,
HTMI.
you want it?
Go ahead, please speak to him. Yeah.
Yeah, so some of the, I'm switching chords with Ted. So the some of those hints that are in those little booklets are just charming and wonderful. And I think that if you were to read through them, you would probably be able to critique your own portfolio pieces. But yeah, that business about those thin fonts on a gray background is like just very off-putting to people who have difficulty reading that. And so a thicker font is
with
desirable.
high contrast color difference.
And yes, these are well known. The contrast distinctions, you know, for a background color and a foreground color are well identified and documented. There's a whole literature about what contrast is necessary.
Good night.
Mariana, we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Here or there. You're going to be back. Okay.
Okay. Great. We have another Mary Claude Parks
okay, Mary.
statement.
No, I was just adding to the list of things linguists.
Okay, yeah.
Good.
I made a list of things you said about linguistics value, and then I asked people to add to it. So
okay, so what did you add to it?
She added prompt engineering.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think linguists are great potentially for prompt engineering, partly because one of the things you get trained in is recognizing ambiguity. And so you know how to avoid it or how to build it in. And for AI, you definitely want to avoid it. You want to be perfectly unambiguous as you create your prompts.
So I'm going to ask a question to the people that are not you, Nancy.
Good.
Which is, you've got a linguist sitting in front of you, and I'm not sure if there are more things you want to ask her about how linguistics can be helpful to human-computer interaction work. And if you have those questions, I think this is a good opportunity to field them.
Right, and I invite Mary and Leilani to chime in also with answers.
If we get questions.
If we get questions.
Pete, is there anything that you'd like to ask about that? Not tonight. Okay. But I think that the reason I asked that is because if it's vague to you, she will go there. She can talk about it. She's
give you a not vague example. And I used to talk like this all the time, but I realize there are many other ways to talk about it too. The linguists are good at ambiguity, detecting it, and also, you know, either building it in or avoiding it. That's why linguists can sometimes be good at advertising, because you want those little word businesses in there to catch the attention. Then another one is linguists recognize, this is a silly one. Maybe it's not so silly. Types versus tokens. Is this a familiar term to anybody in this? Nobody in this room. Yes, Ted knows that contrast. So the first time something shows up, it's just a token. But if you have multiple tokens of that particular characteristic, then you got a type. And so this can be attributed, I mean, you can use types and tokens for how many times does this word or a derived word appear, right? So I say apply, applying, applied, you know, those are all one root. Now, you know, so, but there could be a bunch of types like this, and they may operate differently. So some verbs require a particular preposition, and some verbs don't require that preposition, or they can take several prepositions. So you can categorize verbs in a certain way by what kinds of phrasing they can participate in. And that turns out to be useful because those things are probably contextual. And so, you know, people's behavior in this context is not the same as their behavior in that context. And that definitely translates into, you know, verbal behavior or other kinds of behavior.
I'm going to bring up another one,
Okay.
which is computer scientists spend a lot of time doing language design. People say that you design a language to render your problem simple. and what I think is really unfortunate is that that computer scientists have an engineering and understanding, and they know how to separate different issues. They know how to make things, but they don't. Naming within computer programs is super critical, and naming of parts of a programming language are, and everything you do with a programming language, like make an application, also has the same problem of language design. And you know, what does a language have to do? It has to have coverage, it has to have expressivity, it has to be extensible, maybe it might have to be able to be referring, it might be able to be speaking to another language. I don't know if you want to speak to any of this stuff, but it's something that I think is really understood, and many people that are practitioners of language design don't understand the things that probably linguists could help them with.
Right. What they don't have a lot of experience with the other dimensions. I mean, they're fluent in whatever language they know, English, for example.
Or Pascal.
No, I'm not talking about constructed languages
Okay,
yet.
okay.
I'm talking about, you know, natural.
There's a technical term you just used.
That's right.
Okay.
Constructive. Constructed languages include computer languages, but they also include things like Klingon and other scientific languages.
As opposed to a natural language,
As
right?
opposed to a natural language that just grew like Topsy, right?
Except in French.
Except.
I mean, where they have it's done by committee. You guys know this.
Well, that's the official language, yes. But how people really use the language, you know, then there's this idealization, right? And so in Arabic, the ideal language is the language of the Quran, the written, formal, historical language. But no Arabic country speaks that way. No Arabic speaking country. And there are dialect variations which they deny all over the place because Arabic is one language, right?
And how does that relate to computer design and computer human interface design?
Well, we're back to this issue of ambiguity and so on. Computer languages do not tolerate ambiguity well, right? Whereas human languages are rife with them, and we get along really well most of the time. Occasionally we misunderstand each other, you know.
We have to have ambiguity in natural languages, and we can't have ambiguity in
Well,
design.
for sure you can't have ambiguity in constructed languages like computer languages.
I have
right?
another question for you.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Okay,
Oh, good.
Peter.
We love other people having
Here,
questions.
pass the microphone to
See if
Pete.
I can remember my-
Write a note.
This is a more weird linguisticsy question, but I find I myself struggle a lot with language because it's a reflection of how we think, and that I tend to have I'd almost turn my approach to the world as being sort of an extreme neural network approach to
Extremely
neural network approach to
neural
perceiving the
network
world.
approach. Okay.
So by that I mean that I will think about 100 different things at once, and I'll be weighting them against one another, and there isn't necessarily a direct linear or even chronological relationship in between those things. And I'm thinking about, you know, there are all these contorted relationships in between things, and I find it very, very difficult to express this type of complex system structure where everything is fuzzy via standard language. And I find that very hard to communicate. And I suspect this is a problem that's going to become more and more prevalent as the AI models get more and more complicated, because they might have similar issues.
You think the AI models are going to have a hard time expressing themselves? I don't think they're going to get hung up with thinking 17 thoughts at once like you and I do.
Yeah, I think that they're just going to get very complicated, and we're going to have difficulty understanding them. They're going to need to communicate with themselves.
I'm not sure I understand the problem fully yet.
Let me state what I, and then maybe you will correct. what I thought I heard was that there's language when people are articulate, but a lot of us are thinking on our feet and having many thoughts simultaneously that sometimes bleed out into our communication, but at least distract us in our formulation of problems, and that might become even a bigger problem with working with computers. Is this what you heard?
I think Pete's making
know,
a
I know,
face
I
that
know.
said, not exactly.
A little bit. It's more, I formulate the problem and I think about the problem not in a linear sort of absolute framework. I'm thinking about it in a highly distributed, where every sort of, there are 100 things and things vary in the quality of their data. Everything is sort of weighted. So imagine I'm thinking of 100 variables at once, and each of them I apply a different weighting to. And I'm trying to express or communicate those weightings and all those many ideas at once, whereas in normal language, we would only say about one or two things at a time, and there would be a very direct relationship in between them. And obviously, as AI develops, it's going to get more and more, it's going to become far beyond 100 variables at once. It's going to be thinking about 1,000 things at once, all with different weightings. And what is the language that we can use to express that type of understanding of the world, which is going to be incredibly fuzzy and dynamic?
I feel like the Jeff Goldblum answer is the right answer. Life will find a way. Isn't that the one?
I think that's good. I think that the question that I think I heard you say is prioritization of ideas is complex, and understanding how to express that in linguistic ways that other people and machines understand it seems to be something that's worth working on.
Okay.
I finally figured it out.
I have a question about your project.
Yes. Okay. I probably will have an opinion.
No.
What do you see as a future for that project?
Oh, for the document design particular instance that we chose?
Yes. So I
Well,
can imagine one is like,
Okay.
hey, here's a project that we did as a class. Here's the, this is where we started. This is what we did. This is our product. And it could be part of an advertisement for soliciting other organizations to be interested in submitting their ideas or projects, candidates to your future classes, right? You could develop.
Sure. I mean, this was an obvious example for me because I had spent so many years infrequently trying to interact with this document, right? I'm sure that if we get a chance to do this again, that there will be many candidates for what kind of project we might work on. I think there's lots of documents that need redesigning out there, and I bet each of you can think of 2 or 3 that you might want to nominate for having a good treatment. Now, let me answer a question you didn't ask, and that is, what was the outcome for the people who took the class? There were like 12 or 15 people in that class. The majority of them were faculty and postdoc. There was one guy who was an undergraduate, and there were a few people who were early in their graduate careers, but mostly it was quite experienced people. And I took, as best as I could understand, I understood that the faculty were there. A few of them maybe were there so that they would have a side gig, but mostly they were there to say, what can I do to introduce my students to some practice that would be, quick for them to gain fluency or agility in, and that they could take with them to the world of work later on. And so I think that they felt like they got enough from the class, even only 12 contact hours, and struggling with their mates for the last week on who's going to win on how we're rephrasing this, and are we going to put in so many little check marks or not so many check marks, all the things that they played around with to try to get to some compromise. Despite my saying be bold, I mean, they didn't really cut as much as we wanted, but they did acknowledge that there was I think that they understood that understanding the process is crucial to being able to create a document about it. I think, which may have never come up for them before. I think that they understood some of those principles about plain language and structuring the shape of the information on the page became more alive for them in a way they might not have recognized before. And the fact that linguists who are not afraid of language are able to do this. These are the people who like language. These are the people who want to be able to manipulate and communicate or not communicate, want to have the strength of skills to be able to create a opaque document as well as a transparent document, right? So I from that standpoint, and people answered the questions on the evaluation form so that I could show it to you, but it's not worth it. I'll just tell you a few highlights. And that is, yes, they did learn things that they felt they could take away and do something with. Yes, they felt like there was way too short a time for this class, and there was more material than they could consume in that amount of time, which I'm famous for. I'm willing to do that because I figure this is going to take them through the next 6 months when they get a chance to revisit these ideas again. And, they realize, oh, well, now I've had this lens on document design. I've seen a lot of documents over the last 6 months. I really feel like I have something that I can contribute here and that I'm nearly ready to do this, maybe with a coach or with another person to do it with, and that the notion of having a one-on-one interview, but where you're focused on an object, a prototype, a thing that you can both talk about, get you away from, well, I just don't like it, and that you don't have to worry about those kinds of answers because you're both focused on the thing.
So I have two final questions, but I welcome anybody adding and if there's more. One is about what you were just talking about, but I had this stored up question I'll get to afterwards when you want me to. And that is, you talked about, you obliquely told us that there were other documents that were 1 or 2 pages that other parts of the olive wonder world
The food processing
uses.
world, yeah.
And do you think that giving your students exemplars or alternatives that were so simplified that they could have a contrast or an alternative approach to like rewriting this big legalese thing would have changed the outcome at all? Or do you think that starting with that document and just focusing on that was the right way for the linguists to go?
We had 12 contact hours, and most of these people were not counting on doing homework, and I expected them to do a bunch of time out of class, like with the interviews and the analysis, the interviews and the rewrites, and meet with your classmates outside. So that I had an expectation of more demands on their time than they had expectations.
Yes, of course.
So, in a longer course where you had more time to digest things, yes, that might be fine. That might be a great way to go. I would love to still, I think that the students understood the point that this particular document may in fact be a barrier for the audience that they're trying to attract, that they are not going to be a membership organization that's viable if they continue to present their key document to members who are people who are prospective members, because they have to be a member to go through the SEAL certification. Then they're ruining their own business by not improving the document.
Okay. So I just like exemplars.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask this other question, which is, it's gotten to be quite surprising and common for us to look at web pages that were designed, or documents that were designed for another language, push a button and suddenly see it in our natural language.
Right.
And as a linguist, is this fabulous, cringeworthy? Do you have suggestions for the people that do that kind of work?
Oh my God. I think it's fabulous, and it employs linguists, the multilingual people, right? Because there are things, and we've heard this at Bakai years ago. I don't know if anybody was ever present at one of those sessions, I'll think of the guy's name in just a second, but we have had other talks at Bakai about what it takes to do translation in print or on the page. And it's not only words. It's also all those things like, what symbols do you choose? In English, you see the little symbol of a key, you know, like a skeleton key, and that's supposed to be a key point. But that's only because English has the same pronunciation for those two meanings of that word, right? Those are two, or maybe those are two different words, the physical key and a key point, right? Whereas in many other languages, the symbol of key won't mean a damn thing or won't mean what you want it to mean in that instance. So this is it's a cultural translation issue as well as a linguistic translation
I have
issue.
another question for you.
Yes, sir.
We go back to your ASL life and
Yes.
career, and we recognize that there are still thriving companies that do in-person and online ASL and other ways of making more accessible communications. And in fact, 5 years ago, we spent $1,000 to have one of our Bakai events transcribed in that way. Now we have new tools that are automated. And I would like you to contrast and think about the alternatives and the value of the real thing and what trajectory you imagine for these kind of supports for accessibility.
Okay. Now I'm going to do a little promo.
I thought you'd have something to say.
I have more to say about sign languages and translation than I do to say about AI.
Or olive oil, probably.
Well, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm getting to have a lot of things to say about olive oil. And I have there was an article in the New York Times Magazine in January. I wrote they want you to write 150 words as your letter to the editor. And I had something a little longer than that. And when I tried to shorten it, to 150 to 200 words, I sent it in, but then they say you have to have it within 7 days. But I was traveling, so I didn't get it in 7 days. Anyway, I'm about to publish this, the 150 word version, and then the 1,400 word version. Okay. But the point being, this is the idea of the article was this woman trying to work out to what extent ASL has precision and to what extent there's a dependency on body or face or something else as the expressive part of it. And my response was, I want her to rewrite this article in 2 years when she's more fluent, because she's a level 2 student now. She's on her second semester or something in a non-academic setting, a private, organization that teaches ASL to hearing people. What she hadn't yet quite understood, I believe, what she hadn't really embraced was, this is a different language and a different culture. This is not merely a recoding of English for the hands. If it were, it would be a cinch. Everybody would be good at it. Everybody would be bilingual. It would be so easy. But it's not. The word for lecture doesn't mean the verb. It means the noun. And if you want the verb part of it, you have to use a different verb. But in English, lecture is a verb and a noun. So that kind of distinction is indeed a separate distinction in this other language. The captioning is much better than it was 10 years ago or 5 years ago or a year ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
The captioning has really, really caught up. And, when we used to talk about this 40 years ago, I don't think any of us realized to what degree it was the processing power of the computer that needed to catch up to what the ideas about the translation or, the transcription would be.
Plus there's better models. They have just much bigger models now.
That's right. But that's English.
Yeah.
And that requires that all those deaf people know English really well. And they don't. The majority of deaf people don't go on to school beyond undergraduate. I mean, if they get to undergraduate school. And so they aren't literate in the way that you need them to be to read a transcript of the stuff we're talking about today. The other part of it is a transcript has no intonation. It has no emotional component. And so you've got to use other dimensions to be able to convey that. When you can't tell where I pause, which gives you in the transcript of my speech, when I pause while I'm speaking, you in the room, you who are hearing me, know that that pause has some meaning. I'm looking for a word. I'm looking for a polite way to say what I want to say. I had a little memory lapse. What does that pause mean? I'm trying to find the diplomatic way to phrase this because I don't mean to insult anybody, right? Or I do mean to insult somebody, so I'll use a euphemism and the orange guy, I'll say, instead of using the name. And everybody knows who I mean, right? Those kinds of things are not available when you are only transcribing the speech. Yeah. If you're really translating to another language, the transcript is not sufficient.
So I want to just
an impoverished source.
Amplify what you've said. I've been to a couple, universities where it's just only people that are signing. And also when I've been around people that are signing for business and talks, the amount of emotion, in fact, you're kind of like that, there's much more acting involved, and it's there's a rich emotional character and pacing character to the language that, we can say they aren't fluent in English, but this language that the ASL that they're using is a very rich,
absolutely,
deep, and
one of the points I make in my response to this magazine editorial about, how is that this person has not yet been able to perceive how many different areas of the face contribute to the meaning. So the head posture, forward or down, has meaning. The amount of eye gaze that's open or squinty, that has meaning. Eyebrow raise, irrespective of everything else, has meaning. Puffy cheeks, sunken cheeks, lips, wiggly tongue, side to side tongue, chin, eye dilation, eye gaze, right? So all without the hands. And these participate in differentiating lexical items. They create sentence intonation. They show you if-then hypothetical, first, second, or whatever kind of conjunction you want, and that kind of rich stuff. And for example, here's my favorite example. They do back channel signaling as well. So that if you're watching me and I'm talking and you give me one nose twitch, I know that means uh-huh, uh-huh. So all those little noises that people make back at each other when they're the listener, you get from nose twitches and little wiggles. And you don't have to do, you can do hand too. Yeah, that, okay, right, I gotcha. But you can also do it all on the face. But a double nose twitch, simultaneous two sides, means, huh, what? I didn't get that. So one versus two nose twitches will get a completely different response from the speaker. Because if you say, huh, the speaker will say, I have to explain this again, right? And if you say, yeah, one twitch, they're going to go on and get the next part of their story out, right? So there are many, many uses of facial expression. I haven't gotten into the body and the angle or the back and forth things that you do.
That matters too, right?
Absolutely. And those contribute meaning to the utterance. And that has a huge implication let's think about language as a two-way communication system, because we have been talking here about one way. I'm lecturing, somebody is being my hands while I'm lecturing. And what about a conversation? Or what about interrogating a deaf witness? And there are subtle things that they will say just by leaning back or leaning forward that need to be translated accurately. Previously, I used to do blah, blah. Nowadays, we do this thing, right? I'm going to lean back and a lean forward, right? And turn side to side. I'm quoting Ted, and when he said such and such, but for me, I say it this way. right? And so all these little subtleties are contributing to the meaning of the utterance. And it, you know, in a court situation, these are all high profile, high intensity and high stakes in getting it right. And I don't think, well, so far we definitely don't have AI to read sign. You know, we don't have a big enough corpus. I mean, part of the reason we have a low resource language, right? And Emily Bender's book, I think several people here will be very interested in Emily Bender's book, which is coming out at the end of this week, either the 15th or the 16th. And she is a professor at University of Washington. Who's there? Somebody was telling.
Sorry,
So,
it's today. Her book came out today.
Thank you. Okay, good. I knew it was this week. And she's written a book on what's the problem with AI, right? And why this is a big hype. What's it called? AI Con, Mary?
Yeah, the AI Con.
The AI Con. So I recommend that for everybody who's interested in AI and language. That would be a great place to jump off.
You know, what's interesting about your last answer, and I'm going to hand it over to Edwin, and we are down to many of the people are starting to leave, so
That's fine.
we are going to probably end.
That's fine.
But it's just that I really did want you to get into and explain all the, you know, the way you see language is using the exemplar of ASL really teaches us a lot about the richness of different languages, and especially for disabilities issues, and how they don't have it in, you know, you were saying, oh, they don't know English, but it's not that they just don't know English. They have a very rich communication,
independent
and yeah, different language. And furthermore, in a lot of ways, the English is so impoverished compared to it, that that's one of the things that they don't want to lose, is that language that they have with all of those things you're starting to talk about.
I mean, yes.
Okay, so I'm just making it up, but I think you know more about it than I do.
This just reminds me of all the stuff from like my own undergrad days and graduate days about learning languages, that in our experience of learning and developmental process of learning our languages, we notice the things that make a difference and carry meaning in the language we're learning, and then often lose the ability to distinguish the things that don't mean anything, that don't carry significance in our language, right? So then as we look across, as this person in this article mentions, you know, looking across at a language that she's learning, but perhaps hasn't gained mastery, let's say, over, she's failing to notice the things that she's failing to notice the things that her own language doesn't mark in this language that she's learning, right? Essentially.
Yes, I would agree.
So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining the program tonight.
Thank you all for sticking around.
And we're very happy and proud and honored to have Nancy come out of retirement to talk about more than even she planned to in this 4-part talk, including olives and voting and also document design, but also some ASL at the end.
And
too.
AI,
and AI. Well, yeah, we got a lot in. So thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you next time. We have a couple of different alternatives for who we're going to have for speakers, but we'll stay tuned. And please remember that we are excited about people joining the steering meetings, just to find out about other people in the CHI community, but also to get involved and help
in the CHI.
Take over our jobs.
To take over our jobs and maybe buy the food or whatever we have to do to make this a wonderful,
master of the world.
Okay,
right.
And good night from the organ factory.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon. Okay, let's talk olive oil.